You're listening to The Social Workers on WCDB Albany.
Albany, University at Albany. I'm Catherine Zox, your social worker with the microphone, and you're listening to the Social Workers Radio Talk Show with Catherine Zox and Noah Bondi on the board. And we have two guests this morning. Our first guest is going to be talking to us here from the Capital Region, here in the Capital District. She is the Executive Director of CARES, which is a program here in the Capital District that helps with the homeless. Many of you may know or don't know, and I don't know if you know, Noah, but November is Homeless Awareness Month. So it's obviously appropriate to have I didn't say her name actually, Nancy Chiarella. She was in the newspaper yesterday. It was a big article about her in the Capital Region section of the Times-Union, talking about what they do to help the homeless at CARES, and she is the executive director. Second guest is going to be Frank Terrazzano. Frank is the author of the book Life with Cancer, and he is going to be talking to us about actually, it's a memoir that he wrote called Life with Cancer, which is his daughter was a world-lost Pulitzer Prize winning social journalist, and her name was Lauren Terrazzano. She was diagnosed with lung cancer at the age of 32 and died 3 years later. So this is, and actually won a prize for her journalism. She was writing for a newspaper in Long Island and chronicled the experience that she had the last 8 months of her death with lung cancer. So we got a big schedule today here. Anyway, so I think Nancy's just calling in. Nancy, the Executive Director of CARES. Actually, prior to joining CARES, she worked for the University at Albany Center for Human Services Research. And she has, I don't know how long she's been in the Capital District. Do we have Nancy on the phone?
I'm here.
Welcome to the show. Nice to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was just talking to Noah here at the studio. We were talking about the fact that there was an article about you in the newspaper, apparently. Yesterday?
Yeah, there was actually. We got some good coverage for Homelessness Awareness Month activity we were doing in the region, and got some good coverage from the Times-Union.
Terrific. Well, tell us specifically what you do at CARES, because not everybody does know what CARES is, what they do, and so let's talk about that just for a few minutes.
Yes, thank you. CARES is an organization that's been around over 20 years. Actually, we got started in HIV and AIDS services at the beginning of the crisis by providing advocacy and really getting into housing as persons could no longer work. CARES was at the forefront working in the community to help bring some rental assistance in for those folks. We continue to do HIV/AIDS work. We actually have housing ourselves for persons who were formerly homeless with HIV and AIDS. We also run the AIDS Walk. But through that work, we really grew and expanded to get into the homelessness field. So we are the entity who actually works on behalf of all the agencies in our region to bring in the HUD money annually, to help them apply for the HUD money, and then work collaboratively with all the shelters and housing programs to prevent and end homelessness. We do that through technical assistance, grant writing, as well as partnership building.
So, Nancy, what are we talking about in terms of numbers and homelessness in the Capital Region?
Sure. In the last year, over 13,000 households, unique households, meaning unduplicated, presented at the agencies we work with for services. Of those 13,000, 3,300 were families with 7,100 children. So what that means is actually persons who came to seek services in the 4 counties, Albany, Rensselaer, Schenectady, and Saratoga. These are actually the folks that were counted. CARES' role is also to manage the federal database to collect the numbers of folks who are preventing services to make sure we're keeping track of the needs and gaps in services. And of those folks, 8,000 households alone were literally homeless. That means they had nowhere to sleep that night. And again, the trend is continuing. Over 30% were households with children.
So let's take it specifically. What do you do? You've got 8,000 households where people do not have a home to live in, and you're talking about families, right?
Correct.
So on a day-to-day basis, what do you do? And how do social workers come into play?
Sure. Well, I'm myself a social worker. I got my degree at SUNY Albany, and there's a lot of us who are in these agencies or social workers or case managers. But specifically, how we as a system address that need is we either provide actual beds in the homeless shelters, which people are most familiar with, or what happens when our shelters are full, which is not uncommon. The County Departments of Social Services in New York State actually have to put folks up. So we actually access the motel and hotel system, and the counties pay a per diem rate. And once folks are in those motels, which is not ideal, obviously, for many reasons, we have staff, caseworkers out of these agencies who begin to work with those families and individuals, we're talking both here, but targeting families specifically, to start to rehouse them very quickly. So we do work in the shelters to get folks back into housing and in the hotels. So we have caseworkers, social workers working to quickly rehouse these folks. What that means is we actually coordinate services with the Department of Social Services. We look at what their budget is. We try to find affordable housing. If folks have disabilities, we actually work on getting them into supportive housing, which means that there's a caseworker assigned to that family or individual to keep them housed if they have a mental health disability or substance abuse or HIV and AIDS. We have two kind of housing models to meet this need, but case management is really critical to help quickly rehouse these families, and we are finding success with that.
Yeah, that was my next question, because as you're describing it, it sounds daunting. I mean, like when you getting these families, and particularly not the kids back and keeping them in school, I would imagine, and at the same time finding appropriate housing. Is it available in the region? Do we?
Well, that's a really good question. I want to say that the consensus is among our community, and this mirrors national trends, there's definitely not enough affordable rental housing on the market to sustain the need out there. When we look at folks having to piece together part-time jobs, sometimes 3 part-time jobs just to pay rent, utilities. Now we're facing high utility bills, obviously with the winter coming, as well as some of our older housing stock not being properly insulated. These costs really add up. So it is a daunting task. So we're trying to address it twofold. One, to try to find housing that is affordable, and it is challenging. We're lucky here in our region that we have a good stock of public housing run by the housing authorities, as well as some rental assistance through their Section 8 programs. They're a vital partner to really keep good quality housing that's affordable in the market. But on the other end, we have prevention services, and I just want to address that HUD, Housing and Urban Development, has really seen, as we've known for a long time, it's cheaper to keep people in their housing than to start to serve them once they've hit the shelter system. So now the government allows for prevention assistance. That means when folks are near eviction from rent payment or utilities being shut off, we actually have funds in our community to help pay their rent until they're back on their feet. We've seen a lot of folks who have a medical crisis and can't pay their rent, or they've lost their job or their hours have been reduced. They may actually qualify based on some income guidelines to get some rental assistance. So we're trying to tackle this problem from the front end before they're evicted, as well as quickly getting them out of shelter and the hotels, because studies find that the sooner we get the folks out of the shelter and back into housing, the better they do, as well as their kids for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to bring as much stability as you can to the kids, with the whole family, but really important for the children. What about business? Is a business in the Capital District doing anything to help or enhance, or even developers, or any kind of a relationship between the not-for-profits that you've been talking about and some of the businesses that may be able to contribute to some of the housing?
Yeah, that's a really great question. What I know to be true, and it's really the business relationship with individual shelters and programs is pretty strong. Obviously, all of the agencies we work with, and there's about 50 now, work on business relationships to help sustain funding. But to address, I think, what you're asking is the housing stock, actually physically maybe supporting or building units for affordable housing.
Exactly.
Yeah, there is efforts underway with nonprofits and developers in the business community, but we obviously want to see more. We, for a long time, have been trying to get established what a lot of other communities have in the nation called the Housing Trust Fund. This is where actually communities have a dedicated funding source specifically for affordable housing. And we had efforts underway in Albany and great support from our executive at the time, Mike Breslin. But when the economy soured, it became a little harder, to work with counties to secure a dedicated funding source to go specifically to affordable housing. So I don't think we are where we want to be. We know what the solutions are. There are national models, and there is momentum in our community for sure. But at this point, I don't think it's where we know it can be. The one resource we are fortunate to have, though, in New York State, unique to any other state in the country, is New York State Office of Temporary Disability Assistance actually has funding specifically for capital development. So we have been very successful in our capital region tapping that resource to actually build housing. CARES actually just won a new grant to build more units of affordable housing. But that's a state resource, and we do need to look to the private market and I think to our county governments to establish this housing trust fund to really sustain the needs of poor, but now we're seeing increasing need of even middle-class working families who can't afford to live in housing, working on lower wage-paying jobs.
Yeah, and who go in and out of the, I guess, the demographics for middle class to poor, kind of given this economy. So it's a real challenge that you're describing there. And I have one last question just in terms of people who are listening to the show, not necessarily social workers, but lay people. Is there any, because November is National Homeless Awareness Month, so what can they do? What can we do?
Yeah, I think the best way to direct folks at this point is to go to our website, which is endhomelessnessny.org. And on our website, we actually have links that list all the homeless and housing service providers in our community who are always looking for volunteers or looking, when they have fundraisers to donate. One event our coalition is hosting that I'd like to get out there is we have a Help the Homeless benefit concert with Judy Collins, and that's on December 6th at the Troy Savings Bank Music Hall. We've been very fortunate. The Troy Savings Bank Charitable Foundation and Community Foundation are actually funding this concert for us, and proceeds will go to all the homeless and housing agencies in our community.
And it's not, I read, Nancy, because I was looking at that, Judy Collins, one of my favorite, but it said it was sold out.
I know, and that's my fault. It's not sold out.
Okay,
There's
good.
about 100 tickets left, and it should be a great show. And the proceeds will, partial proceeds will come to our shelters. But the website is also a good way to stay in touch when there's advocacy efforts out there. It's a website in development, but we try to put the most current issues going on. And as you said, every November we do host events that the community can get involved in.
Fantastic. It's been great talking to you this morning. Lots of information, and thanks for the website. And if anybody wants more information or wasn't able to hear the whole interview this morning, you can always call us here at the station, or you can call me at kzvoice@aol.com, or you can email me at kzvoice@aol.com for more information. And it's Nancy Chiarella. Did I pronounce that right?
It's Chiarella.
Chiarella. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
We're going to take we'll take a short break now. What do you say, Noah? Because our next guest is probably trying to get through. I'm Catherine Zox, your social worker with a microphone. You're listening to the Social Workers Radio Talk Show at WCDB FM University at Albany. We'll be back in a minute.
Oh, hi, Jessica.
Hi, Mrs. Johnson. Is Megan there?
Sure. Follow me. The kids are in the kitchen making sandwiches.
Hey, Julie. Hi, Megan. Hey, Megan.
Yeah?
You're a total freak. God, you're ugly. And dumb. Oh, and your makeup makes you look like a tramp.
Oh, my God.
Tommy Morris told me you guys made out. Everybody knows. The whole school knows. He said your breath smelled like garbage, and he almost puked. He says you're the most desperate girl he knows. And that dress is totally hideous. You look like a big fat clown. Disgusting. Oh, and by the way, Nice zit.
If you wouldn't say it in person, why say it online? Delete cyberbullying. Don't write it, don't forward it. For more information, visit ncpc.org, a message from the U.S. Department of Justice, Crime Prevention Coalition of America, National Crime Prevention Council, and the Ad Council.
He's lazy. She's stupid. He's a racist. That one's greedy. And there's a terrorist.
If you look at people and all you see are labels, everyone loses.
Labels hurt all of us, and they're wrong.
Every one of us is unique, a one-of-a-kind original.
Every one of us is a one-of-a-kind original.
Every one of us is a one-of-a-kind original. Our diversity is our strength. Instead of stereotyping, we can all learn from each other.
Don't let prejudice shape your view. Take the time to get to know people and see for yourself who they really are.
We are all one of a kind.
Stereotyping is wrong, and it hurts all of us. Stop stereotyping.
A message from your American Muslim neighbors and the Islamic Media Foundation.
You're listening to The Social Workers on WCDB Albany.
Catherine Zox, your social worker with a microphone. You're listening to the Social Workers Radio Talk Show on WCDB FM University at Albany. Joining me this morning is my next guest, Frank Terrazzano, and he's the author of Life with Cancer. Pulitzer Prize winning social journalist Lauren Terrazzano lost her life to lung cancer, but not first without chronicling her last 8 months in her Newsday column. And so her father, in honor of her legacy, collected reminiscences by family, friends, colleagues in his new book called Life with Cancer, the Lauren Terrazzano Story. So welcome to the show. Nice to have you on this morning, Frank.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
Is it Terrazzano?
Yes, it is. It's Terrazzano.
All my guests this morning have these names I can't pronounce. Oh, how are you? Well, what a book! I mean, it's obviously it's heart-wrenching, and Lauren was was an only child, right?
Yes, she was,
yeah.
And she was just a great young lady. She always set high ideals and goals for herself when she was younger, and she was really, truly an altruistic child, and no question about it. A young lady. I mean, she thought always of others, of trying to make life better for others, and no matter whether they be animals or humans or whatever, and that was just her nature, and just a great kid. And the primary purpose for me writing this book actually was that, when she was younger, she got into journalism, she said, Daddy, someday I'm going to get a Pulitzer, and I hope to write a book. Well, she accomplished the first in part. She shared a Pulitzer Prize with her Newsday colleagues for the coverage of the 1996 TWA Flight 800 disaster off of Long Island. Sadly, she was unable to write her book, but I'm hopeful in some small way that my book about her fulfills that wish.
Yeah, I definitely is. It's quite a book. It's one of the questions, I mean, we haven't even talked about, she was diagnosed when she was, 32?
No, she was at 34.
34. And then she lived...
36. 36.
She was diagnosed at 36, and then she lived for 3 years after that.
Yes.
And she went to Boston University. I just have to say, I'm a Boston University graduate.
Oh, you are?
Yes, I am.
Son of a gun. She went to BU, and then she got her master's at Columbia.
At Columbia, yeah.
And she also taught there part-time as an adjunct professor.
Yeah, a very intriguing young woman, and brilliant and smart and all of those kinds of things. So what happens when, I have 3 boys. I a little bit younger than Lauren's age, but from a parent's perspective, it's like what your kid is diagnosed with cancer in their 30s, something that just comes totally out of the blue, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's devastating. Again, being our only child, and I'm sure most parents all what they feel for their children, there's no question, that goes unquestioned. But she was just something special to us. She was our princess, and she used to tease us because, as a matter of fact, she used to introduce us as Mr. and Mrs. Helicopter, because we were constantly hovering over her for all of her 39 years, and she would tease the heck out of us about that, But we were just a close family, and always worried about her, and I'd like to convey a little story, perhaps, that when she was during her remission, she had been diagnosed in 2004. I'm sorry, my dates are confused there. She was 34 years old, and she had been diagnosed. Yeah, what's 2004? I'm sorry, August of 2004, and she went through chemo and radiation. They tried to arrest the tumors that way, and it didn't quite work out that well. So they decided to go in around December of that year and remove her right lung, which they did. Well, subsequent to that, in 2005, she was in a state of semi-remission, I guess. We all thought that, based on what the doctor said, that they thought they got it all. But as usual with cancer, one little errant cell, and it starts all over again somewhere else. Well, Lauren, when she was attending Columbia, she became very close friends with a young woman by the name of Dina Fernandez, who was from Guatemala. And her parents owned one of the major newspapers down in Guatemala. Well, Lauren and Gina became very close friends, and Dina used to come up to visit us, and likewise Lauren would go down to Guatemala on occasions to visit her. Well, Dina had invited her down in October, I think, of 2005. Lauren was in semi-remission, I guess, and Lauren decided she wanted to get away, and she did. So she went down, and this was shortly after Hurricane Stan had hit the area. And while she was down there, I guess Guatemala had suffered, as a result of the hurricanes, massive mudslides. A lot of the mountain villages were literally washed away or engulfed in mud, and entire villages were lost and buried in the mud. Well, Lauren, I don't know how she pulled it off. We didn't know about it until she got back, but she was able to get a hold of the U.S. Army Southern Command and somehow convince them to allow her to fly with 4 young, very brave American soldiers who were delivering water and foodstuffs. And for 15 hours, she spent along with them on this Chinook helicopter, visiting all of these mountain villages, distributing the foodstuffs and the water. And she documented it all and then wrote an article about it when she came back to the States. But we never knew anything about it. Again, she was always trying to protect us and keep us from, worrying and what have you. And we didn't find out about it until after she came back from the States. And at that, we had to find out from her friends. She never said a word about it.
Well, she was a born journalist.
She really was. She really was.
Obviously got nurtured along the way, but still, it sounds like it was just in her blood. That's who she was.
Absolutely. From a very early age, she was really early into. She worked for the local newspaper, the school newspaper, and she really enjoyed, doing that. So.
But then she decided to. Now, what happened when? Because obviously, this is related to your book. I mean, she is an award-winning journalist, and yet she said, I think, as I remember in the book, when she was diagnosed with cancer, it was like, she was always somebody who always got the facts about everything, but then when it was it was like, I'm not sure I want to know all about this. It's really difficult for me to ask those kinds of questions that perhaps I should be asking. Yeah. But she then decided to write a journal and about her last 8 months, and that's what I do want to talk about that, because that's what, our listeners, we want to, if we can help somebody out there, or a family, or a person who's suffering like she did.
Absolutely. She, one of the reasons, there were 2 reasons to write this book. My daughter, the last 8 months of her month, she wrote about her cancer, the weekly column, Life with Cancer. And in it, she really went after, got all the facts and figures and details and just said exactly what she was going through. She didn't mince any words. She let the people know that exactly what she was going through as far as her medical treatments and the types of medicines and so forth and so on. But, I wanted to point out the fact that my daughter for 14 years, was a journalist, in New York, and she championed the causes of abused children, the elderly, and the homeless, truly becoming a voice for the voiceless. And I wanted to point that out also, that the prime reason for the book was not only to write about her courageous battle with cancer, but also to detail the fact that she was always thinking of others, always trying to make life better for others, and that was...
she was taking on the tobacco company, wasn't she, when she was so sick?
Exactly. Yeah. There's one situation, I think we mentioned it in the book there, where perhaps I can just detail some of the stats. This blew me away, and I was a smoker for 30 years. I gave them up 20 years ago, and it was ironic that my daughter she was a smoker. I think she smoked a bit in college, and even her doctors considered her a non-smoker. But how she came down with this disease, it's just something that still belittles, it confuses me, or I still cannot comprehend why or how. But anyway, she brought so many statistics to light. I couldn't believe some of the things myself. I remember, and I think it was in 2006, she indicated that she found that of 213,000 women who were diagnosed with breast cancer, 40,000 women had died from the disease. However, for lung cancer, there were 82,000 women who were diagnosed in that same year, and 72,000 women passed away from the disease. I just couldn't get over the stats there. It was just absolutely incredible. And that lung cancer is actually the number one killer in the U.S. It kills more than breast, colon, and prostate cancer combined.
You know, I did know that, Frank, and one of the reasons is I think last month was Lung Cancer Awareness Month, and we had a couple of experts on, and a woman also who was a social worker here at the university who was diagnosed with lung cancer, and she had that very similar statistic. Part of it is is the stigma associated with lung cancer. They blame the victim. Well, if you have lung cancer, you smoked and you deserve to die.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. You know, and unfortunately, even the money that is being spent, I think there was something like $96 million was spent on breast cancer and roughly about $35 million on lung cancer research. You know, so again, it's probably because of the stigmatization, I guess, with the smoking-related. You know, people think that right away, as you just said, you know, you smoke, well then that's why you got the cancer.
Yeah.
You know,
and they're not aware of the statistics, even of people who don't smoke and are diagnosed with lung cancer, which was true in Lauren's case.
You know, she even while she was doing this her column, the research toward the end of her life there, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks before she passed away. She'd been after a marketing director for the either Philip Morris or the Camel tobacco company. I'm not sure which it was. Well, anyway, she finally was able to get him to call her back, and she was on her cell phone when he called her, and she was in her hospital bed, and she interviewed him and asked him, you know, basically she chastised him because Camel was then marketing cigarettes to young ladies or to young women, you know, and she chastised him because of that, and all the while she was interviewing him, she never once let on that she herself was dying from lung cancer, and that she was in a hotel bed right now at Sloan Kettering, performing this interview with him. So he never even knew that she was dying. You know, she would have been dead in three or 4 weeks from that date. You know, while she was doing this column. That's the type of person she was. I mean, she just went after the story and wanted to let them know what the hell they were doing to the young women. You know.
So, and as a result of that, what happened as a result of her writing that article or getting?
Well, you know, as a result of the columns, she got numerous. I mean, people were getting. She was getting cards and letters from people all over the country because I guess Newsday was not only was they publishing it weekly in the New York area, but they were also syndicating it to various newspapers across the country and what have you. And she was getting cards and letters of support. So if anything else, I mean, even the cards, she was getting cards and letters of well wishes from people in Britain and Scotland and the Middle East. They were reading it online apparently. So at least, if for nothing else, I mean, she brought awareness to the disease. You know, which it never got the what's the word I'm looking for?
The disease itself never got the recognition.
Recognition, exactly. Yeah. You know, it never got the recognition, and at least in some sense, she really helped to bring it to light, to bring it to the forefront. You know, and now we see more and more that lung cancer. There are numerous organizations out there who are doing lots of work on behalf of lung cancer and research and so forth and so on. So at least, if for nothing else, she brought it to light, and hopefully, this scourge of a disease at some point maybe cured.
Yeah, well, I mean, she certainly has done her part as you have as well. But in writing this book, another thing that stood out, I think, to me in the book is that Lauren, not only was she engaged in her work, but she was engaged in her relationship with her friends, which ultimately led to so much support for her. Like she had her girlfriends, and each one of them was very special. And you know how important that is, not only when you're well, but when you're sick.
You know, there are 5 girls. I made mention of that in the book.
Yeah.
There are 5 of them which I refer to as her de facto siblings, you know, and there's no question in my mind that those 5 girls. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's those 5 girls. That's.
I'm sorry. I get emotional.
Yeah, those girls.
Those kids
were there for her.
Were there for her all the time.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we lived in Boston. Obviously, we used to make the trip back and forth, you know, but. There were times when she'd shoo us out of there. You know, she'd say, "Oh, you got to go home now." She'd tell us, you know, she was sick of having us around. I mean, she had that support, boy, and if it wasn't for them, I'll tell you, they really helped us so much, you know. And
Do you and your wife, do you stay in contact with the girls or young women, actually?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we do. No question about it, and we remain in touch with them.
Yeah.
They were just great kids, and well, I'll tell you, the support group she had, without a doubt, I mean, they were just terrific.
Now, and also I want to mention, and Lauren was married as well, twice?
Yeah, she was. I prefer not to
talk about it. All right. Let's talk about you as a parent, and I know this is tough, but boy, this is something, I mean, as a social worker, and I work with families, or have worked with families and friends, and, when your kid is diagnosed with cancer or some kind of a terminal illness, how do you deal with it? I mean, advice probably isn't the right kind of word, but...
there's really no advice.
There's no advice, yeah.
There's no advice to give, other than to support her as best she can. Dad, she would always say, Dad, Mom and Dad, don't worry, we're going to get through this, we're going to get through this. She was more optimistic. I tend to be an optimist anyway all my life, and have been. But Lauren was really very optimistic. I guess.
Oh, she got it from you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that, but she always tried to look at things in a better light, and as I say, that's what she did her whole life. She was always trying. When she wrote about the stories about abused children, the elderly, whatever. She truly became a voice for the voiceless in New York. And we had the occasion, my wife and I, to after she passed away, to go down to New York. She received the Joni Award. There's an award that's given in New York, and we were at the Lincoln Center, and they presented the award to us posthumously. And we also went down. She was named by the Suffolk Community Council on Long Island as the Advocate of the Year in 2008. We went down there, and they had a dinner, and they presented us with an award to her, again posthumously. But the thing that we really caught me was when we were there at the dinner, there were more people that came up to us who ran homes for the homeless or for the abused children or whatever, and they came up to us and were so thankful to Lauren for all the stories that she wrote about the situations in our society that these people are working very hard to change or to help people. And the one thing they all said was that she wrote about these people with dignity, and that really stuck with me. I mean, she was always trying to make their lot better in life, and that really hit home with me. It really made me feel good, I tend to be a social liberal individual myself, and my daughter followed in my footsteps.
Carried on the legacy for that, yes. I tend to be also, as a social worker, yeah.
Yes.
I do as well.
Yes.
And, so, all right, so, okay, now, you've written a book, and my question is, what's the response to this book?
Well, obviously it just came out in October. October 2nd was the release date, and I've been doing a number of radio interviews and also newspapers. We had about 7 or 8 newspapers who did features on it. So hopefully, I mean, the response is there. People will pick it up and learn more about the disease and. My wife and I, she was our only child, and I co-wrote this book with a gentleman by the name of Paul Leonardo. He's from Rhode Island, and I, not having any experience whatsoever in writing, whatever, in limited education, high school, I think was that's all I did have. I started this book in December of 2010 to fulfill my obligation to Lauren, which I felt was my obligation. She always wanted to write the book, and she never got the opportunity to do so. But I got about 50 or 60 pages into it, and I guess what do they call it? Writer's block? Or
Writer's block when you can't, you're stuck.
Yeah, I can't. I just
stuck.
hit a stone wall, exactly.
Yeah.
And I happened to see Paul one day. He was on a local television station promoting a book he had co-written with another woman. And I sent him an email and put together a little package, and he got back to me and thought the premise was a great story, and we got together, and here we are. He was able to help me find a literary agent, and they shopped the book around, and HCI Publication thought it was worthy, and they published the book.
That was great. That's a smart way to get it out there. So in other words, those kinds of things do happen. You can be watching somebody on television,
That's
and
right.
yeah,
Exactly.
and actually, and if you,
I realized my limitations.
Yeah,
that was the
yeah.
thing. And so I knew I needed somebody with more expertise.
Yeah.
In the area.
Well, you have the story, but how to tell it is a whole different.
Yeah, exactly.
The medium, it's different. Yeah. And so, and then, how about your wife? How does she fit into it? Was she part of writing the story?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, she Lauren, Ginny contributed. obviously she spent a lot of time with Lauren when Lauren was sick in New York. I would go back and forth from the city, and it's quite expensive to try to stay. We stayed in her apartment for a while. She had a small apartment when she first got diagnosed, and I would sleep in the living room couch, and my wife and I would share Lauren's bedroom. But it was a small apartment. I had a problem that most men I seem to have, which is snore, and so that we couldn't go on in that respect. So I would come back to Boston and then go back to New York, and on the weekends pick up my wife. We'd come back, and then her girlfriends would come in and stay with her or whatever.
I think when someone is really sick and someone you love and you're attentive and you're there, you kind of work out a kind of a new way of organizing your life, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And once you do that, you do. I'm going to ask you because you do. It's in the book, but you talk. Lauren's experience with there are a lot of young people who are in the hospital diagnosed with cancer, unfortunately, and she obviously became a part of that community. So, and it is, I think, supportive too when you feel scared and alone and all. And so.
It is a frightening. It really is. I mean, nothing can. I can't explain what we went through for 2.5 years and what she went through. I mean, she really went through hell. I mean, she with the chemo, with the radiation and all that. There were times that I'm sure most people get frustrated. They just don't want to go on. Because as I said, what she started out with the lung. They removed her lung, and then they found a small tumor near her eye. Fortunately, it wasn't cancerous. They were able to go in and they surgically removed that. Then from there, it went to her rib, and so it just seems to go on and on and on. And it's definitely a scourge in mankind. I don't care. That's exactly what I refer to it as. It's a scourge, and I feel so badly for the people who have it, who get diagnosed with it, and the children. It's just you wonder. You question everything in life. When things like this happen, you say to yourself, why?
And so what keeps you going? I mean, you had a very bright, talented daughter, a very special kind of person, certainly not ordinary. Perhaps most of us are kind of ordinary, and we get diagnosed with cancer, and we get all this stuff too. So what do we do? I mean, you're talking about, and maybe you can't answer this, but I mean, like Lauren is somebody was well educated. She was, we've been talking about her for the past 15 minutes, and she was somebody who was out there, and she just, was a very special young woman, but not everybody is so special.
No,
and then they also have the chemo and the stuff.
That's right.
And I mean, it's difficult for everyone, but perhaps maybe, yeah.
I'll say one thing. Originally the title of my book was going to be "Reaching for the Sky." Okay, because when Lauren was a youngster, I was a kite aficionado. And I used to love to fly kites. Anything involving flight, I love that. Maybe I'm a frustrated pilot, but in any event, when Lauren was young, I used to take her down to the beach on a Sunday or something like that. Sunday morning, her and I, and take my kites, and we'd go fly kites. And she loved kites. I can recall her, every time I'd be running along the beach, Daddy, all I hear from her, she was like 5 or 6 years old, make it go higher. And originally, and that was my original title for the book, was going to be Reaching for the Sky. But Lauren had come up with a title for her column, A Life with Cancer. And she was very specific when she told me that she was her column was going to be titled Life, with Cancer, because she said to me, Daddy, she said, I'm going to live my life. She says, cancer is secondary. She said, but my life is more important, and I'm going to try to live my life as best as I can. And that the publishers thought they liked the idea of the title of Life with Cancer as opposed to my title, so we went with that there.
Well, she was definitely the journalist in this case.
Yes, she was definitely the journalist, exactly.
But I think also what that points out is, and I think that's a kind of a really important point, that, first of all, the word cancer is there, and that's something that people generally don't want to talk about.
Exactly.
It's the elephant in the room, and someone's sitting there with cancer, and no one can mention it. So when you put the title, to me anyway, you're just saying what it is. It's life and it's cancer. And
right.
And it's reaching for the stars is nice, but not exactly what it's all about.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, Lauren, as I said, when she was younger, she always wanted to be the best. She always wanted to always be number one. She strived to be the best she could possibly be in this book, and in writing her column, that's exactly what she did. She was being the best that she could possibly be, and detailing everything that she went through, and perhaps making the public aware of what this disease does.
Well, I think what it does is, and you just said it, it's kind of a scourge on our society. Yeah, and it's very painful, and it's very, and I think there's also a myth, and obviously you touch on it in the book, but you get chemo, you get treatment, and then you're okay, and somehow you just, not that you breeze through the treatment, but I think sometimes family members and friends don't understand the extreme and excruciating pain and all of the stuff that people have to go through. I have a best friend who just died of cancer this summer, went through it with her, and as you're describing this, the chemotherapy and the whole process, it's horrific.
It is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. I would like to mention one other thing. Shortly after Lauren passed away, and I was able to convince Newsday. They gave me the rights to all of the columns that she wrote in her series of Life with Cancer. So what I did is I compiled those and put those into a little booklet, which I make available free of charge to anybody. I gave them to many cancer treatment centers, Sloan Kettering, Mass General here in Boston, a number of other hospitals, and also cancer support groups. And the book we make available, as I say, free of charge. And if anybody, any individual or family member or somebody who's currently fighting their battle, I'd be glad to send a booklet to them, free of charge. As I say, it contains all of the actual columns that Lauren wrote the last 6-7 months of her life. So I'd be happy to give my email address if somebody would like a booklet.
All right. Are you sure you want to give your email address on the...
Well, you don't think
I'm not sure. You may not. I always have to remind people, you are on the radio. People are listening. We're on the net, too. Yes, so people are listening, and they can be anywhere in the world. So maybe I wouldn't do that right now. But unless it's public, unless you have a website or something like that.
Yeah, I don't have a website.
Yeah.
I'm not that.
I would be reluctant to have you do that. Don't do that. Right. Yeah, but that's good to know. And that kind of leads me into my next question. Like, anything that you just... you spent so much time in the hospital, and anything that you think that may be helpful in terms of hospitals, in terms of what they should or should not be doing when they have young people in the hospital, things that they can add to their the care, the support, whatever it is.
To be honest with you, Sloan Kettering, she spent most of her time at Sloan in New York. There was a couple of occasions where she came up here and for a weekend and decided to come home, and she had some situations arise where she got an infection, and we had to take her to Mass General here in Boston. But generally, in all, the hospitals and the nurses were just fantastic. I mean, they just were. I can't say anything, bad about them. I mean, they really do cater.
They're dedicated.
They really are dedicated, and the doctor, Dr. Flores, her doctor, he was the surgeon who performed. They hit it off immediately, he and Lauren, because he himself was her age, and he was an only child also, and they just bonded, and he was just a terrific guy, and he did everything he possibly could, to save her, and she was really diagnosed at stage 3B, so it was kind of a tough situation to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
and
which, as I understand, is fairly common to be diagnosed at stage 3.
Oh, is that right?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a physician.
I thought 4 was the worst, and 3.
3 or 4, but not necessarily in the beginning. I guess it's difficult to diagnose. Yeah. But So, all right. I want to mention the book one more time, and it's Life with Cancer, the Lauren Terrazzano Story. Terrazzano. Maybe I'll get that. Terrazzano, yeah. And we are talking to Frank Terrazzano, Lauren's father. Anything else we want to leave our listeners with? We got about another minute left before we go to break.
The book is available online at the major Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. Hopefully, as I say, the other thing I did want to mention, I indicated in the book, we've committed ourselves, my wife and I have anyway, whatever we realize from this, our share of it anyway, is all dedicated. And it's earmarked for, we started a scholarship at Columbia in Lauren's name back in 2007, and it's been growing over a period of time, and we continue to support that each year. And along with her friends and colleagues who have also supported the scholarship, we've been able to give scholarships, not much. I mean, the last 4 years, $1,000, $1,500 scholarships to individuals who are currently studying journalism at Columbia. So at least we know that long after my wife and I have left this earth, Lauren's legacy or Lauren's name will remain in perpetuity, in that respect. And whatever other monies come, we've got earmarked for 2 organizations that Lauren wrote about. One was the Lung Cancer Alliance, and the other was Joan's Legacy, Uniting Against Lung Cancer. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, so you're carrying on her good works. Lung
Absolutely.
Cancer Alliance, that's who was on our show a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
yeah.
they were?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They do good work, and we're in Albany, and this is in the Capital District. And
hopefully the book will sell well, and those organizations will be the benefit of the sale.
Terrific. It was great talking to you this
Same here.
morning. Yes,
Same
thanks
here. Thank
so
you
much.
so much for having me.
Thank you,
so
Frank.
much
Thanks for sharing the story. Yeah, Frank Terrazzano. Catherine Zox, you're listening to The Social Workers on WCDB FM, University at Albany, with Noah Bondi on the board. Noah and I are going to take a short break. We'll be back in a minute.
Hi, I'm Peg Phillips. Lately, I've been hearing public officials talk about certain kinds of people as if they weren't really people. Immigrants, welfare mothers, illegitimate children. I remember a time when people could be proud of their immigrant roots, the countries they came from or their parents came from. I remember when welfare was started precisely to help mothers who were trying to raise children on little or no income. That's why we called it welfare. And I thought the term illegitimate child had gone out of our vocabulary forever, because children are children, no matter who their parents are, and we need to take care of them. How can we stop the politics of fear? Let's get involved in building communities, not barriers.
This message is brought to you by the American Friends Service Committee.
And we're back. Bob from Scranton, you're on the air.
Hi, Ted. Love the show. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thanks, Bob. Is there a special someone out there you'd like to talk about?
There is, Ted. I recently lost a very big part of my life.
You'd been together a long time?
Since college. This is for my belly, my paunch, my spare tire. I know we had some good times. God knows I'll never forget that night in Albuquerque with the burritos.
It's never easy to lose something that's been such a huge part of you, Bob. Where'd the magic go?
Well, I'd recently begun taking the stairs more and more instead of the elevator, and then we started seeing less and less of each other. One day, it was just gone.
Small step number 67. Take the stairs instead of the elevator or escalator. It's just one of the many small steps you can take to help you become a healthier, you. Get started at www.smallstep.gov and take a small step to get healthy.
A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
You're listening to The Social Workers on WCDB Albany.
We're back. I'm Catherine Zox, your social worker with a microphone. You're listening to the Social Workers Radio Talk Show on WCDB FM, University at Albany. And joining me this morning is Noah Bondi. We got a few minutes left, Noah. Let's talk about what we're. I always like to get your reaction to the guests, particularly this last guest, because you are young, and this is a father who really did write a legacy to his daughter. It's scary stuff.
I think it's a really great thing that he did. I think, it's him and his wife, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I think
his wife's name is Ginny, and she's throughout the book as well.
I think that's just an incredible thing they did for their daughter, and I think that when you lose such a special person, that it really, you do need to do something to pass along their legacy, because they can't anymore. And I just think that that's an incredible thing they did.
She was 34 years old when she was diagnosed?
34.
35?
34 when she was diagnosed, 36 when she passed away.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, have you ever had, I don't even like to say it, but there are so many younger people now, it gets being diagnosed with cancer and terminal cancer. I don't know if you've had anybody in your family or friends or had that kind of an experience.
Yeah, I have. In my family, older people have died. My uncle was 60, and 60 is not old, but it's not young, so.
No, it's not young, and it's not old. It's kind of, and this sort of in between now, yeah. But not quite the same as like when you lose it.
No, not at all. But that, equally as horrible.
Well, what about here at school?
I really don't know anybody at school. who has been diagnosed or has passed away from cancer. I've definitely heard, read about people seeing it on the news, younger and younger, and
it's important to talk about it. I think this is one of the. This is what it came out with Lauren's father, with Frank. But even today, and it would surprise you perhaps, but people don't want to talk about cancer.
Yeah.
And and for the person who is either going through treatment, or for the family or loved ones when the person has died, it's so awful not to be able to talk about the person who died and their disease. And so anyway, I think that's something that obviously he's done with writing this book. It's okay to talk about it. And the title of the book, which Lauren said, I think that Life with Cancer, because that's what it is. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, being able to still live a life, do things, and still fight the disease. And a lot of times, you'll lose the battle, but it's still, I think, worth it to try your hardest to not live a normal life, but definitely,
it's a new normal.
Yeah.
And it's not normal, but it's not normal. You never go back to the way you were, obviously, but when I read books about people who have been diagnosed or suffer from cancer, whether they lived or they died, and they've written journals or books, it's always like, you hear the term, this is the new normal. I have to adjust to the new normal. And some people do and some people don't.
Yeah.
Or they don't.
Yeah. A lot of people definitely have a really difficult time adjusting, or don't. But I just think it's such a thing that affects everybody on some level, and to ignore it is preposterous because it's everywhere. And I think that what it comes down to is that we need to take real steps to bettering ourselves, not only with cancer research, but through that with food and drink and environmental factors, because that all those things lead up to being diagnosed with cancer, especially young. You can't tell me that a young person gets cancer and it's not because of environmental factors, food and drink. Like, things are out there now. People get diagnosed younger and younger because things are getting crappier and crappier.
Yeah, well, I think environmental issues should be the talk of the 21st century. That's something we should be doing politically, and here at universities too. I don't know, how involved are students in understanding the impact of environmental carcinogens, for instance, on our health?
I think there's a huge level of complacency. And
I thought you were going to say there's a huge level of participation.
No, I think people are very complacent and sedentary, and they think that, I can't really make a difference. Like, these issues are huge, and I'm just me, and even if I join an organization, we're not going to get anything real done. So, it's a big thing. And my mom is a big advocate of the environment and keeping it clean and getting it better.
And does she do things like outside? I mean, within her own home, yes. But what about groups, different groups and stuff? And you're from New York.
What I was going to say is she always says, you want to cure cancer, fix the environment, because it really is like a scientific research proves that the air, your food, what you drink, fresh water, tap water. It definitely has gotten worse and worse, and there's carcinogens in it, whether you realize it or not. And people spend thousands and thousands, millions of dollars on fighting cancer, and if they spent the same amount of money on the environment, the thought is that maybe there would be a way to decrease the cancer rate at the same time.
Well, instead of doing it after the fact, let's talk about prevention, which has to do with environmental carcinogens and the impact on us, on our whole environment. And there's a book, and I'm not recommending the book, but I did interview the author, and you might be interested in this. Also, your mother might be interested in this book. It's called The Self-Health Revolution. Do you know that book?
No, I don't. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And it's for lay people. It's not for professionals necessarily. And this guy, at 40 years old, looked at himself in the mirror and decided, I'm fat, I'm overweight, I'm unhealthy, on and on and on, lost 50 pounds, and then decided to investigate more in terms of what he eats and the chemicals that he's been eating for the past 40 years, which all of us,
right,
I think was what you're talking about.
Well, Twinkies are no more.
Twinkie. So should we say goodbye Twinkies?
I've never had one, actually.
I never did either. And I grew up in the Twinkie generation.
Yeah.
I never ate those things. The Twinkie, they actually, even then, looked sickening. Twinkies and what was it? Doodles or
ring
some
dings, ding
right?
Dong rings,
right? Dipsy doodles, whatever they were.
Snowballs.
Yeah.
I think before your time, there was Twinkies were made.
There was no food.
There's the dinosaur.
You were foraging for your food in the forest.
No, the Twinkie was made with banana cream filling. And when World War II came, they rationed the banana and they changed it to vanilla cream filling. And I really like bananas, so if they had still made them with banana cream, I probably would have had one by now, but I have no interest in vanilla cream.
Well, but how about, what if you just had a banana? Hey,
yeah.
I mean, you might wake up in the morning and have a banana or some fresh fruit.
Yeah. Fruit is great. It gets overlooked. I think that, people who go out there, I want to get a peach rings. Why don't you just get a peach, man? It's probably cheaper. It's better for you. But yeah, fruit is nature's candy, and I say that as corny as it sounds, but it's really awesome. It tastes great, and it's so healthy, and it's especially when it's fresh.
They say, and this isn't too new, but if you go in the grocery store and you go pick out your food, and if there's one thing on the label that you can't pronounce, put it back, because whatever it is, it's not. Because you can pronounce peach and banana and those things, but if you can't pronounce it, then you really shouldn't be eating it.
Yeah.
Fairly simple.
Yeah. No, because there's...
This guy in this book, he stopped eating all this stuff, started eating real food, lost weight, and you feel so much better. And he talked about the fact that, and here I go on to the pharmaceutical things, but, if you have something wrong with you, and you will, if you keep eating all this stuff, what do you get? Medication. You get upset stomachs, acid reflux, all that stuff. You go to the doctor, they give you what? Drugs? Medication.
Anti this,
anti that. So he says, he gives an example. This is a metaphor for that kind of thing. You get a nail stuck in your foot. You go to the doctor because you're in a lot of pain, and he or she, the doctor, says, "Oh, you're writhing in pain." They give you, well, I have something for your foot, and they give you painkiller. So you take the painkiller and the pain goes away, and as you're limping out of there, it's, "Oh, by the way, doctor, but are you going to take the nail out of my foot?" And the doctor says, "Well, we'll think about that later. It's not a problem." And that's exactly what oftentimes is what happens to us. We just are treating the symptoms and not looking at our behaviors that cause the symptoms. Right. Why do we feel sick? Why do we have a stomach ache? Why do we have a headache? Why do we have all this stuff? Because we are not, well, let's start with where it all has to do with environmental, I say carcinogens, or the food we eat.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to be more self-aware is what it comes down to. You can't just...
Isn't this what we're helping people to do on the show?
Yeah, actualize yourself.
Self-actualization. That's what social workers help you to do.
Yeah.
Become aware. It's painful, though, sometimes.
It is, but it's also great when it happens, because, I see a lot of people just live their life and they have no idea.
Going through the motions.
Oh my! Yeah, I hear about it.
Even young people.
Yeah. Oh yeah, young people especially. I think by the time you're out of college and you start to, realize well, I screwed up, or well, am I really? That's why there's so much divorce, because you think that this is how you live your life. You go to school, you get married, you have kids, and then you realize wait, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. And I think, I'm at the age where kids or young adults or teens or whatever you want to, post-teen, 21, crowd.
You're not a teenager.
But I'm not an adult. They're beginning to go through the motions, Maybe high school was whatever, middle school, whatever. Finishing up college, and that's what you have to do. You had to go to college because that's accepted, and then you have to graduate college because you already started it, and after college you have to get a job, and then you have to look for a partner, and after that you have to have kids and you have to buy a house.
Well, we have one of the have-tos. I have to tell you this. I think that you do have to go to college if you go, because I always said to my kids, that's one of the things. When you're 40 or 50, you'll never be sorry that you went to college. You're never going to say, gosh, I wish I hadn't gone to college. If you don't go, you may say, I'm really sorry that I didn't go to college. But guaranteed, one of my sons was thinking about getting a master's degree, and he got it. And he was contemplating whether he should do it. And I said, you know what, Johnny? You are going to never be sorry at 40 that you got this master's degree.
No, I agree. A
job's something, you may be sorry that you took a job that perhaps wasn't suited for you. It gets a little more complex. That's it.
I think people are very, very concerned about financial stability, and more so financial excess. Nobody wants to be stable. People want to be able to have a disposable income, which is, I mean, if that's really your goal in life, then that's your goal in life. But, you know, for a lot of people, there's more out there, and a lot of people don't realize it and tap into other areas. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to, spend a life helping people, and you don't realize it until, you've gone through the motions.
I think it